to our July webinar. We are North America's leading online sales and marketing solutions provider, including our housing directory, our online library, and e-newsletters. We also offer, free of charge to senior living communities, the top experts in senior living every month who will share their knowledge in the fields of marketing, research, sales, and related areas in webinars such as the one you're about to hear. This month, we present Harold Urman and Chelsea Murdock of Vital Research, a consulting firm specializing in research and evaluation. Their presentation, Employee Satisfaction, Key Predictors and Trends, will teach you how to identify the key predictors of employee satisfaction. Harold is a trained psychologist and has worked as a statistical consultant at the University of Southern California, and Chelsea manages the Aging Services Division at Vital Research. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so if you'd like your questions answered, raise your hand in the toolbar to the right, type in your question, and time permitting, it will be answered at the end of the webinar. And of course, you are also more than welcome to ask a question anytime during the presentation. And now here's Chelsea, who will begin the webinar.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. So I'm going to start off by talking about our objectives for this webinar. The first objective is to understand the different dimensions that make up employee satisfaction. And then we're going to talk about some of the key drivers of overall employee satisfaction and show how satisfaction varies based on different demographic variables such as department, shift, and years worked at the organization. So first, to just give you a little background on Vital Research so you know who we are. We do internal and external customer satisfaction evaluations and service quality measurement. And Vital Research has been doing this for 30 years now. The first surveys were done in 1982. We work with more than 2,500 organizations, including aging services organizations, state departments, and universities. So if we look at our entire database of our employees, it's made up of only aging services employees and includes over 200 aging services organizations and more than 25,000 employees. The data we're going to look at today is just from the past 5 years, so that we're looking at things that are current. But that still includes over 13,700 employees. Most of the organizations in our database are CCRCs or multi-facility organizations. Our surveys and our evaluations, as well as the results we're going to look at today, are broken up into what we call domains and dimensions. So these are all of the things that make up employee satisfaction. Things like your immediate supervisor, trust and communication, teamwork, performance evaluation, all the things that together make up whether or not employees are satisfied. So first, I'll just give you a little background on our database and the evaluations that we normally do. And I'm also going to look at a few of the trends that we've seen in our evaluations. And then Harold's going to take over and talk about some predictors of overall satisfaction and look closer at some other patterns and trends that we've seen in the data. So if we look at our entire employee database and break it down by some different demographic variables, you'll see that since these are aging services employees, 41% are in the nursing or healthcare department, 23% are in food service and dining, followed by housekeeping, administration, and so on. If you look at the years that the employees have worked at their organizations, it looks pretty evenly distributed, but most have worked from between 1 and 5 years at that organization. If we look at shift, most work the day shift, and most are white followed by Hispanic. Some other demographics for you here are that 81% of the employees are hourly employees, 73% are female, and 66% are from the Western states. So first we'll look at satisfaction overall, some overall findings for the whole database, and then later we'll look at some more broken down by some demographic variables. So overall, you can see that 38% of employees are very satisfied and 46% are satisfied, for a combined total of 84% of employees being satisfied at some level. Now this is based on just one question at the end of our surveys, which says, overall, how satisfied are you with your organization as a place to work? So based on that question, overall, how satisfied are you? 84% are satisfied and 16% are dissatisfied, meaning that 1 in 6 employees have some level of dissatisfaction. So now we're going to look at what the sources might be for these different levels of satisfaction, and we're going to do that by comparing those domains and dimensions that I mentioned and looking at the specific scores for each of those areas. So this graph shows you the domains and dimensions and the specific satisfaction scores for each. So you can see that, for example, 97% of employees are satisfied with the resident quality of life at their organization. 82% are satisfied with teamwork, 63% with trust, and 60% with workload. So when you look at this graph, you might think about which areas you would want to focus your quality improvement efforts on. And what I'd like you to do, if you want, you can pick out 1 or 2 areas that you think you would focus on and type them into the question bar and explain which ones you picked and why, and then we can discuss it a little bit at the end if we have time. Now there's some other ways to look at the data as well, and these are some specific indicators or questions that are on our surveys, and these are the ones that have the highest satisfaction scores. They come mostly from the resident quality of life area and also from an area that we just call general job satisfaction. So some examples of resident quality of life items would be helping to satisfy the resident is everyone's responsibility. And at the end of the day, I feel I have contributed to the quality of life of residents. Some examples of the general job satisfaction area would be, my job is interesting and challenging, and I look forward to coming to work each day. Now if we look at the indicators that have the lowest scores, the one with the lowest score overall is, I always feel I'm racing from one thing to the next. And this is followed by, I work under a great deal of tension. And these are both from the workload area. But we also have indicators with low satisfaction in the areas of trust, immediate supervisor leadership skills, and the administrator. So you can see that our evaluations produce a lot of data, and it can be a little overwhelming to decide which area to focus on. So one way that we help organizations decide where to focus quality improvement efforts is with something we call the priority index. Our priority index takes into account both the importance of an area and the current level of satisfaction. So if something is very important, and by that we mean very related to overall satisfaction, but satisfaction is already pretty high, you probably wouldn't want to focus your quality improvement efforts there because employees are already satisfied. If the employees have low satisfaction with an area, but it's also not very important to satisfaction overall, you also probably don't want to focus your efforts there. You want to focus your quality improvement efforts on areas that are both important and have some room for improvement. Harold likes to say it's the areas where you'll get your most bang for your buck in quality improvement. So if we apply the priority index to the domains first, and we'll do it with the indicators later, if you look on the right column, you'll see our priority index score. And you can see that there are 4 that rise to the top as really being the areas that we would say you should focus your quality improvement efforts on. The top 4 domains are trust, immediate supervisor management skills, immediate supervisor leadership skills, and employee focus in the company overall. But the one with the highest priority index score is trust. And trust is something that comes up in a lot of studies of employee satisfaction. For example, according to some case studies done by the Aging Services of California and the Institute for the Future of Aging Services, one of the attributes of a successful workplace environment was an open door management policy that is based on trust. In another national study of employee satisfaction in acute care settings, it was found that the 3rd most important indicator of employee satisfaction was senior leadership can be trusted to be straightforward and honest. So now if we take the priority index score and we apply it to the specific indicators or the specific questions that make up all of these domains and dimensions, we'll look first at trust, and what makes up trust and how those scores come out. The indicators for trust, when we apply the priority index to them, the one that stands out as needing the most attention is, at this organization, what people say and what people do are usually two different things. So this is where we would say organizations most often need to focus quality improvement efforts. If we look at immediate supervisor management skills, which is the next area that was identified, the two indicators that come up as needing attention are, I am more likely to hear that I'm doing a good job from coworkers and family members than my supervisor. And my supervisor shows favoritism in what he or she expects from staff. So these are, again, areas where we would focus quality improvement efforts. If we look at supervisor leadership skills, the two areas or the two indicators that are highlighted are, my supervisor is a good teacher. I'm always learning something new from him or her. And my supervisor rewards staff when they have done a good job. And finally, if we look at employee focus for the company overall, there are three indicators that are highlighted by the priority index. And they are, this organization cares about me as a person, high quality work increases one's chances of promotion at this organization, and there is a happy atmosphere in this organization. Another part of our evaluations consists of some open-ended questions or some areas where employees can write comments. And another way to evaluate employee satisfaction is to look at themes that come up in these comments that the employees write. If we look at one of the questions that we often ask, which is, what do you like most about this organization? The themes that come up most often are residents and families, coworkers, people, atmosphere, teamwork. These are all things that have to do with the people in the organization and the relationships that they have with the people there. It's something that we see again and again, which is that employees care most about their relationships with their coworkers and in aging services with the residents and with management. If we look at the question, what do you like least, or what would you change about this organization, you can see that the themes have lower frequencies, meaning that people mention a lot of different things. But the four that come up the most often are compensation and raises, organizational structure and staffing, and then the bottom there, administration, management, coworkers, and workload are all mentioned with the same frequency. The 7% that say where it says employee satisfied are people who said they wouldn't change anything, they're satisfied the way things are right now. So now I'm going to hand things over to Harold, and he's going to talk about some other predictors of employee satisfaction and some other patterns that we've seen in the data.
So I just want to go back for a moment to the overall satisfaction question. That's the single question that's asked on the survey overall, how satisfied are you with this organization as a place to work? And recall that 84% of all the employees in our database are either very satisfied or satisfied with their organization as a place to work. 16% being dissatisfied, which, as Chelsea might have mentioned, that represents one out of every 6 employees has some level of dissatisfaction. So if we take this overall satisfaction question and break it down by department, you can see that the yellow line going across represents the percent that are very satisfied with the organization as a place to work. The department that has the highest satisfaction is administration, followed closely behind by housekeeping and laundry. The lowest satisfaction is food service and dining, followed by maintenance, security, and plant operations. Nursing care and activities, as you can see, are right at the essentially the benchmark level for overall satisfaction. If we take a look now at satisfaction broken down by the years with the organization, we begin to see something that is going to be a pattern when we look at other domains and dimensions. And what we see is that in the very first year of employment, satisfaction is always the highest. And fortunately or unfortunately, it begins to drop beginning in years 1 and 2 and remains pretty stable at a lower level all the way through years 6 to 9. And it's only at about the 10th year that satisfaction begins to start to creep up again. And I would raise the question to you as to what are your ideas about why this might be happening? Why are employees most satisfied in year 1, but after 1 year of employment, their satisfaction tends to go down and remains stable for quite a long period of time before it starts to creep up again? And you can just submit your answers. We can discuss those at the end. If we look at overall satisfaction by status, we see that salaried employees are far more satisfied overall than hourly employees. Again, this is a pattern that you're going to see when we look at some of the other domains and dimensions. And finally, if we look at shift, we see that the weekend shift has the highest level of satisfaction, whereas the lowest level of satisfaction is your night shift. This is followed by evening and then day shift. Excuse me, I seem to be having a little technical difficulty switching to the next slide. Okay, so pardon. So let's go back for a moment to the priority index that Chelsea spoke about, and there were 4 domains that were identified in that priority index. One aspect to that priority index is that we look at each of the domains and dimensions separately and then come up with the ones that are have the highest priority index score. But there's another way to look at which of the domains and dimensions are the strongest drivers of overall satisfaction, or another way to put it is what are the best predictors of overall satisfaction. And using something called a regression analysis, we're allowed to take all of the domains and dimensions and simultaneously analyze them to come up with those key domains and dimensions that are best predictors of overall satisfaction. And when we do that, we see that leadership skills, trust, employee focus, and workload are the ones that are the best predictors. And you'll notice that the one that has the highest predictive value is leadership skills. And why would it be that leadership skills is the most important driver of overall satisfaction? Well, one way to answer that might be that in a study on the effects of employee satisfaction on company financial performance, they found that the #1 characteristic of companies that quote-unquote get it have principled leadership, which means that management makes a commitment to employee satisfaction as an indelible part of the organization's DNA. They also found in a study of Philadelphia nonprofit homes that found that the strongest predictor of lower turnover rates was management style, which I think falls within leadership skills. This is followed by employee focus, trust, and workload. If you remember the slide that we showed for the for the priority index, many of the domains and dimensions, I think 3 of them actually turn up here, also turned up on the priority index. So that's somewhat not a coincidence. But the analysis to determine that is done in a different way. So let's take a look at some of these domains and dimensions that are best predictors of overall satisfaction and see how they play out when we break them down by department. If we look at trust by department, we see that the department that has the highest level of trust is the administration, whereas the lowest level of trust is in housekeeping and maintenance. Housekeeping and laundry, excuse me. Activities has a trust level that is slightly above the average score based upon the entire database, and maintenance, security, and plant operations is just slightly under that total score. nursing is right about at the average score, nursing and healthcare. If we break this down by years with the organization, we see that pattern again. Very first year of employment, satisfaction with trust is at its highest level, 74%. And by the way, when we look at our entire database of employee satisfaction, usually trust has one of the lowest levels of satisfaction. It tends to be in that 60 range. So it's actually quite surprising that we see in year one, 74% of all employees that have been there less than 1 year are most satisfied trust in the organization. But again, you can see quickly within year 1 and 2, it has dropped considerably, drops again in years 3 to 5, and then slightly is going up in years 6 to 9 and 10 plus. It's not exactly the same pattern that we saw with overall satisfaction, but again, we see that sort of sliding down beginning right after year 1. We also notice that trust by status, once again, salaried employees are far more satisfied than those that are hourly employees. And again, that might be a question to raise to you as to why you would think salaried employees would be more satisfied with trust than hourly. Is it security in their job that plays a role, or are there some other factors that might be causing this difference to exist? And again, we see that trust by shift. Notice that the highest level of trust is with the weekend shift, and that the day, evening, and night shift all have approximately the same level of satisfaction. This is another pattern that we have seen in the data, where we find that weekend shift tends to have the highest level of trust, they have the highest level of leadership skills, satisfaction, and you'll see this over and over again. And again, thinking about what is it about the weekend shift that would make them so much more satisfied than the night, evening, or day shift. And if we look by geographic location, we find that those organizations that are located in the western region of the United States are more satisfied than those that are in the eastern region of the United States. So what are the key findings that we have so far just based upon trust? We find that administration has the highest level of trust at 76%, whereas housekeeping and laundry have the lowest level at 55%. The first year of employment, 74% are satisfied, and it significantly declines between years 1 and 5. Salaried employees have higher satisfaction than hourly employees, and the weekend shift has the highest level of satisfaction, while the other shifts remain relatively stable. Switching for a moment to leadership skills, we can see that, and notice right away, I just want to go back for a moment. If you just look at the scores for trust, you can see that they're in the, except for the weekend shift, that they're in the 60s. But when we switch right away to leadership skills, you notice that the scores have gone up. Not that there isn't some variation in the scores, but now we're looking at scores that are in the high 70s and 80s. So there is a, when we compare leadership skills to trust, there is a higher satisfaction with leadership in general compared to something like trust. And the area that has the highest is administration, the lowest being at nursing and healthcare. And it was one of the reasons that this might exist is why would nursing have the lowest level of satisfaction with leadership skills? It has been brought to our attention that many times directors of nursing come up from the clinical area, and they come up without the leadership skills. So they're put into positions where they have good clinical skills, but they really don't have the leadership skills that go along with the position that they're in, and consequently employees become dissatisfied with the leadership within nursing and healthcare. If we look at leadership by years in the organization, once again we see this pattern, 87%, which is a really significant satisfaction level as we see it with leadership skills in the first year, but again immediately dropping down to 80% and then to 74% in years 3 to 5, slightly going up again through 6 to 9 and years 10 plus. As far as leadership between salaried and hourly employees, salaried employees, again, tend to be more satisfied with the leadership skills than hourly employees. And if we look by shift, once again, we see that the weekend shift tends to have the highest level of satisfaction. If we look by geographic location, organizations within the western United States have slightly higher satisfaction scores at 80% compared to 73% in the eastern part of the United States. And although we don't have a slide for this, the satisfaction levels of males is slightly higher than that of females. Males have a satisfaction level with leadership skills at 81%, while females have a 78% satisfaction level. In summary, we find that administration and activities and resident relations have the highest satisfaction with supervisor leadership, while nursing has the lowest level. Satisfaction with leadership skills is highest in the first year, but quickly declines between years 1 and 2, and then levels off after about 6 years of employment. Salaried employees have the highest satisfaction with leadership skills than hourly employees, and the weekend shift, as we saw in with trust, has the highest satisfaction with leadership skills, but other shifts are not far behind, which have a range of between 76 and 79%. I'd also like to take a look at workload. And when we look at workload, this is also one of the domains where we find some of the lowest levels of satisfaction. This is across the board. People feel that they're working under a great deal of tension, that they're quickly shifting from one thing to another, and these are some of the things that go into general workload. So we can see that nursing and healthcare have the lowest satisfaction level at 56% with workload. And this isn't to be unexpected. When you think about the workload that CNAs have, both the physical workload and the responsibilities that they have, we see that typically in nursing, healthcare, that satisfaction levels with workload are the lowest. Housekeeping and laundry is at 59%, and again, that's something that we typically see. And then the other three, except for administration, their satisfaction is 63% with workload, yet it's hard for me to understand why it would be lower than something like activities and food service, where there is far more movement, physical lifting that's required to do the work compared to an administrator. If we look by years in the organization, once again we see this pattern, but the pattern has shifted a little bit. And now we still see that high satisfaction level in year 1, but notice that in year 10, that rather than seeing a leveling off of satisfaction, what we're seeing is a pretty significant dip, even between 6 to 9 years and 10 years plus, where workload has, the satisfaction with the workload has actually gone down to the lowest level. Could this be that employees that have been there longer than 10 years are now older and doing this physical work is harder? That's a question again that we might want to raise, or if you have some suggestions as to why workload satisfaction would be lowest for those people that have been there the longest, I would appreciate some of your comments. And this is the first time that we see that workload for salaried employees is lower than that of hourly employees. If you recall, for the other dimensions that we looked at, hourly employees were least satisfied with those domains and dimensions, but this is the first time we see that it's switching. And if we look at shift, which has not really changed, we see that the weekend shift still has the highest satisfaction with workload, the day shift has the lowest satisfaction, and then evening and night are somewhere in between. This is a little bit different than what we've seen with the other domains and dimensions, because the night, evening, and day shift tend to have about the same level of satisfaction, but here they're clearly standing out as being different from each other. So in summary, we find that nursing and housekeeping laundry are the least satisfied with workload, Workload satisfaction is highest in the first year of employment and declines to its lowest level at 55% after 10+ years of employment. Hourly employees have higher workload satisfaction than salaried employees, and the day shift is least satisfied with workload, while the weekend shift remains most satisfied. So what have we learned? We've learned that 84% of employees are very satisfied or satisfied with their organization as a place to work. Across all domains and dimensions, all 14 domains and dimensions of our employee satisfaction survey, resident quality of life is highest, while workload at 60% is the lowest. The best predictors of overall satisfaction are leadership skills, employee focus, trust, and workload. We also learned that satisfaction with trust, leadership skills, and workload are all highest during the first year of employment and then significantly decline starting in years 1 and 2. Salaried employees have the highest satisfaction with trust and supervisor leadership skills, but have lower workload satisfaction than hourly employees. The nursing department is the least satisfied with supervisor leadership skills and with workload. The weekend shift is generally more satisfied than on all the dimensions, while other shifts are relatively the same. And there are a few differences in satisfaction between males and females, which is why we didn't provide slides to show that in this presentation. And finally, for all 3 dimensions, employees in the western portion of the United States are more satisfied than employees in the eastern portion of the United States. I want to thank everyone for attending the presentation today, and look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Harold and Chelsea. You know, it's remarkable. You never really think that statistics are so fascinating, but we do have a few questions here. You've talked a lot about, I mean, the research and statistics are quite stark in many areas. Do you have any practical suggestions or some ideas which communities can take advantage of? Well,
you know, we've worked with a number of organizations. Some have brought in consultants that have helped with leadership skills. What we really feel you can do to help improve employee quality of work life is to engage the employees in the conversation about how to improve satisfaction. Oftentimes we see that organizations that find that they want to improve their satisfaction immediately go to their management and look for ways to improve so that the employees would be more satisfied. And our suggestion might be that you not only engage management, but engage the rest of the staff in conversations about how to improve satisfaction without management there, so that they feel that they have a voice. And once they feel that they have a voice, it's remarkable that perceptions begin to change about how satisfied they are with their organization, because they now have a stake in improving it.
So then do you recommend a kind of a formal meeting, or just perhaps some more of an informal one-on-one talks with employees?
Maybe sort of nothing. I would suggest that you create groups of employees. It might be within different departments. Ask people to participate with the understanding that everything that they have to say will not go back to management, and that this is an opportunity for them to explore and discuss areas that you as an organization realize you need to improve upon. I mean, one of the things that it's important about an employee satisfaction tool, whenever you do a survey, it's often thought of that a survey is something that you're going to use to find out how bad you are. All the things that are wrong with your organization are going to come out within this survey, and that's what stops a lot of people from maybe going forward with a survey or from communicating the results. But if you look at the survey as a tool for quality improvement, as an opportunity for you to highlight those areas where you know you're doing well and celebrate those, while at the same time recognizing that there are opportunities for improvement, and yet you need the employees in order to create a better organization, you'll find that your employees take a very different tone with you when you ask them for their open and honest opinions.
Okay. We have another question here. What do you think accounts for the gap in satisfaction between the East and West Coasts?
Well, I really don't. I don't think I have a good answer for that. And I think any answer I might give would bias me towards one direction or another. So I might just suggest that, I don't, when we were looking at these results, we were startled by some of them as well. And I have to admit that I don't always have an answer as to why they are the way they are. And this would be one example where I don't think I fully would understand why they would be different on the East and West Coast. I don't know enough about the management style, leadership style, other factors that I'm not even considering or don't have information about that might influence the satisfaction levels based upon those domains and dimensions that we discussed today.
Okay, well, I'm sure we appreciate your candor, and my initial thoughts, somebody working in California, in the sunny beaches, that might just have something to do with the satisfaction, but perhaps. Anyway, thank you again, Harold and Chelsea, for that amazing presentation. Again, that was Harold Urman and Chelsea Murdock with Vital Research. This presentation will be available on our website and at youtube.com/retirementhomes, as well as at retirementhomes.com. Next month, mark your calendars for Thursday, August 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, when we have a very practical session on how to protect your retirement community from legal trouble with 2 labor lawyers from firm Sherrard Coos. Again, check retirementhomes.com for information on that webinar, or contact me at robert@retirementhomes.com for details. Thank you very much. Have a